Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 Early Access action. We're here with more Prophet and the Warlock. This time, the Tomb Kings are going to be taking on the foul Skavens with their new stuff. And as you can see right off the bat, my Vanguard Carrion are getting their faces blown apart by Skaven weapon teams, which is just amazing. I'm up against Black Iron Battles once again. Big thanks to him for all the battles he played with me. We played quite a few, so I'll have a link to his channel in the description down below. Of course, you guys be sure to go check him out. He's going to be putting up some epic kind of cinematic type stuff from what I understand. So yeah, in terms of this battle, Tomb Kings versus Skaven, I just wanted to see, do the Skaven still tend to struggle with undead type factions? So, what has Black Iron brought? Well, first things first, Clan Rat Spears out to the flanks. We've got Skaven Slaves mixed with Clan Rats up front. Queek Head Taker, very interesting choice on foot. We thought that Queek may have had some buffs, so we just wanted to try him out here. He's got Trophy Heads, Warp Shard Armor, and Stand Your Ground. Clan Vulcan Tail Slashers, a regiment of renowned Clan Rats as well. We've got a couple Rat Ogres, a couple weapon teams here, Jazales, and the Rattling Gunners as well. More Ogres and two Plague Claw Catapults. For myself, I've got two Screaming Skulls, I know, right? But the leadership damage is pretty good against the Skaven. We've got Skeleton Chariots out to the flanks, because of course, Chariots against the Skaven. Likewise, Grand Hierophant Kotep here on his chariot. He's got double Vortex for maximum disruption. We've got a Tomb Prince for anti-large. And yeah, some Skeleton Horseman Archers to provide some anti-Rat Ogre work. And right off the bat, you can see the Carrion already sensing the danger, taking a ton of damage. We're going to rush them in to start to disrupt some of these missile units. Likewise, the Screaming Memes are going to start to counterfire the Skaven weapon teams, and this is honestly one of the best things you can do. We're also going to start unleashing vortexes from Kotep. The Sandstorm, Darude, unleashed right in the center here, and with these Carrion, I actually did give them a bonus versus large. They're up to 48 total weapon strength with a bonus versus large of 16, so they can actually do a little bit of damage to these Rat Ogres as they kind of bog down this pocket here. But yeah, as I was saying, counterfire, disruption with vortex spells, and pretty much anything you can is what you need to do to these rat weapon teams. Kind of as I talked about in my games with Turin, it's very, very important to disrupt the weapon teams, and these Screaming Meme catapults actually can do some really good work. The damage isn't amazing, but the leadership damage, you can see these Rattling Guns are not happy. They're pretty close to routing regardless, so it's not going to take a lot to make them rout. We have managed to rout off some Plague Claw Catapults as well, and the Chariots are starting to punch through the front line and be able to get into the second line as well. Of course, Chariots, very key in this matchup. Unfortunately for Black Iron, his Rat Ogres were not in a position to counter that, still trying to fend off these Carrion and protect the artillery pieces. So that's kind of the idea, is you just give a target overload. Like these Rat Ogres are bogging down this Tomb Prince over here, which is probably pretty good, but at the same time, they catch the Scorpion Legion in here, poisoning them, providing that anti-large. The Tomb Prince also gives anti-large, granted. He's got trophy heads on him right now, so his stats are pretty much in the dirt. But meanwhile, in the back line, you can see Kotep pushing through very heavily, Screaming Memes being unleashed, and also a Vortex. Yeah, I was hoping this would go on to some of these fleeing weapon teams. Looks like it did not actually. Did a little bit of damage to the Catapult crew, but yeah, it's not looking great for the Skaven. The balance power still pretty even, though. This Tomb Prince is getting dragged down by Queek here, so once he can get into contact, he can definitely do some serious damage. And with that Trophy Heads active, they did change Trophy Heads so that the Assassins no longer have it. Queek is now the only one that has this. However, that does mean that if you take Queek and an Assassin, that you can stack the two effects. The Assassins have the lower tier version, the Assassin's Trophy. So if you stack those two effects, you can really nerf the combat stats of an opposing character. But with the loss of that Tomb Prince, that has kept the balance of power relatively close. The Chariots are going to be a serious problem, though. They're still this huge, massive Chariots. There's a lot of Skeleton Horsemen here as well, and they're doing some good kiting, firing at those Rat Ogres. High-value target, low armor. They can do good damage at long range. Kotep, though, getting sniped at by some of the rallied weapon teams here in the forest. Even low numbers as they are still dangerous, so I'm going to go ahead and skedaddle out of there and unleash some vortexes on these Skavens here. Try and get a little rear charge on them. The Rat Ogres are pursuing those, so Kotep is in a little bit of a pickle. It's definitely not the best situation, and I don't have the Noble to go try and bail him out at this point. A nice Warp Lightning doing some good damage to those Skeleton Horseman archers. Black Iron honestly doesn't have too many other options for doing damage to those Skeleton Horsemen, but the Skaven leadership unfortunately just can't hold up. Overwatch fire from said Horsemen doing some good work, and the Chariot's also going to charge in. They're not really meant as an anti-large type unit, but with their high charge bonus and fast speed, they can at least chase away the Rat Ogres here. And yeah, weapons teams are an issue though for Kotep. He's getting suppressed at this point by those Rattling Gunners. Speed's getting debuffed a little bit. But as soon as that wears off, I'm going to go ahead and pop that physical resistance. Of course, since the Rattling Gunners and the Giselles don't do magic damage, as a lot of the Skaven missiles do, he can get that physical resistance, and it actually will help against those particular missiles. But yeah, at this point, things are not looking great for the Skaven. They've just got a few units left. The Screaming Memes is still online, and the Vortex is still being unleashed onto those poor ratty boys there, and that is going to rout them off pretty quickly. I got a new Shabti summon right on Queek, so these Shabti are now just surrounding and pounding him. He's in a very bad situation. They actually, unfortunately, just pushed him out there. But yeah, he is getting knocked around quite a bit as well. He's taking a ton of damage, and the Skaven are getting pretty close to army losses. So I wanted to showcase this one, and I've got one more to showcase as well, just to kind of show how I think you need to approach the new Skaven, which is to say, bring some artillery, some counterfire artillery that can go after weapon teams at long range, and then try and just rush forward despite your artillery advantage. Obviously, if you watch the Greenskin replay that I had against Black Iron, you'll know sometimes it is better to sit back and try and wait on your artillery, but obviously Screaming Memes aren't necessarily the best counterfire piece, since they're not an anti-large type artillery, so I wanted to push forward anyway. I had a pretty aggressive build with chariots and so on, wanted to get back and provide some disruption, and that's the other key. So counterfire artillery is key number one. The other key number two is disruption. You've got to have some way of disrupting those weapons teams, keeping them from just ripping your face apart, because they are very, very dangerous. Grand Hierophant Kotep still alive here. Queek has got the trophy heads. It's going to be a bit dangerous for Kotep, but you know, he's probably going to be fine. Queek is getting pretty close to critical army losses here. And that'll be game for the Skaven. So let's go ahead and take a look at the end screen here. Before we move on to the next one, you can see the chariots were obviously a big key component of the army here. All 4 units racking up a bunch of kills, 147, 103, 80, and 121. This is the main damage portion of my army. Grand Hierophant Kotep himself also got 121 kills with his vortexes and his chariot. I love this setup for this matchup. For Black Iron, probably could have stood to go a little bit heavier. If you were to trade these Plague Claw catapults down, maybe bring a Warp Lightning Cannon instead, and then another unit of Rat Ogres. I might even say you want 4 units of Rat Ogres. Like, I might cut this Rattling Gun team and go 4 units of Rat Ogres, just to give you lots of mass to make sure you can stop up chariots when they come. Because obviously Tomb King chariots, I don't know if they got a little bit of a buff. I want to say they got a little bit of a buff in this last patch. They are slightly cheaper. They're only 700 instead of 750. So yeah, they're going to be a big risk in this matchup, obviously, and they can do a ton of damage, as you guys saw here. So you definitely want the tools to deal with the chariots. I would say this build actually is pretty solid. Queek might not be a terrible option, honestly. It's pretty cheap. Obviously, Skrulk would give you summons and a bit more utility, so if you want a cheap option, I would generally recommend you going for Skrulk instead, but Queek can be a nice niche, certainly. But yeah, cutting just the catapults and cutting one catapult, cutting one Rattling Gun to bring 2 more Rat Ogres, and then I would probably cut the other catapult for a Warp Lightning Cannon just because that's going to be more useful for going after chariots. And then again, you just stay focused, use all your DPS to try and take down the chariots, and then focus down Kotep and so on. But yeah, let's move on to the next one. If I can look at my notes here to see which one it was. As you guys can see, I've got a whole bunch of replays. Okay, so we're looking for number 18. That's going to be Beastmen versus Skaven. So I was a little bit concerned about double Doom Wheel in this matchup. We've got relatively wide force here, not super wide by any means. We've got a couple of elites, but Morgar, the Shadow Gave, leading the way, of course, because missile resistance, chaos spawn, regeneration. There's no reason not to bring him, really. We've also got a Bray Shaman Lore of Beasts for Cygor summons, one of which we're going to be pulling up right off the bat. A nice light front line of Ungor Herd, Ungor Spearman Herd with shields, the Eye of Morslib, and the Butchers of Kalkengard, as well as a couple of mobile groups. We've got Centaurs and Poison Warhounds out on this flank, and another Vanguard group in the center. For Ikit's Skaven, he's got some Warplock Jezzails, Ikit himself up on the Doom Wheel. He's got Slave Slingers, Warp Lightning Cannon, again, mixed Clan Rats and Slaves in the front line, Rattling Guns, 2 Rattling Guns this time. He's got some Storm Vermin with Halberds, the Council Guard as well, trying to close the gap here, but unfortunately, the Beastmen, the Centaurs, and these Hounds are able to get through here and get on top of one of these Rattling Gun teams. So this is a great pick for me. I'm going to get a free 800 points here, basically. Despite the 70 armor, these guys have extremely poor combat stats, and they're going to get taken out very, very quickly. That being said, I'm going to lose quite a few of these units here, so, was it worth it at the end of the day? It's hard to say. The Jezzails actually came forward because they didn't have the greatest line of sight. And because they're far forward here, I'm going to be able to target them with the Eye of Morslib. And again, counter-fire artillery, sort of the same concept here. We're using the Cygor, who does a lot more raw damage than the Screaming Memes, but obviously doesn't have the leadership effect. We're just using him to pound these Jezzails as much as possible. Just go after those weapon teams, try and again, disruption here. Even though I lost out these Centaurs and the Hounds early on, we're able to disrupt this Warp Lightning Cannon, shut down that unit of Rattling Gunners, and so on. So, same concepts apply in this battle. And yeah, because these Jezzails are a little bit caught out of position as well, we're going to go after them with the Ungor Raiders. And yeah, a little bit of an unfortunate situation there. Those Jezzails are going to get routed off, but they should be back. Butchers of Kalkengard are taking some heat, but being that they have regeneration, I'm not too worried about it. My mobile group over on this side is going to get opened up by those Rattling Gunners, which is not the best. Ikit's also kind of standing around, making sure that he knows the terror and the mass, or I know rather, that his terror and mass is on station to help protect. We're going to pull up the Bray Shaman here, try and do some more disruption. Cygor, the summoned one's already offline. It was able to get some good damage done initially, but the summon really doesn't last a super long time. Meanwhile, over here, this Wheels of Doom came back into the back line to try and disrupt, it looks like. Maybe was chasing those Poison Warhounds, but yeah, Morgar's going to start moving over. I believe we pinned it in place with the Eye of Morslib ability there. But yeah, my front line's not doing amazing. The Ungors are doing okay in some pockets. They actually are pretty reasonably cost effective. But yeah, we're going to pull the Ungor Raiders back. There are quite a few Storm Vermin mixed in here, so it's a little bit of a heavy front line. But if we can just hold them in place for some time, let the Ungor Raiders shoot at them a little bit. Over here, these Spearman Herd are just absolutely overwhelmed by numbers. We're going to drop a nice little Vile Tide there. Refresh the vigor on all my troops. The second Cygor summon was pulled up right on top of these Rattling Gunners here because, again, disruption. Although that was a little bit of a mistake because, of course, summons now have leadership, and the Cygor is going to get routed off by Storm Vermin and Ikit there. So a little bit of a wasted summon. Didn't really get too much damage out of that one. But meanwhile, the Bray Shaman, who's also on a chariot, can run some disruption. He just finished off that Rattling Gun team there. And the effects were actually able to help the Ungor Spearman Herd and, of course, the Butchers of Kalkengard with their terror help able to win the center engagement here. You can see also the bow fire all going after the Council Guard here. The Council Guard holding off a lot of the Beastmen infantry. They did manage to wreck some Ungor Raiders, but they're taking a lot of Overwatch fire as well. And despite the fact that Ungor Raiders have relatively poor HP, they do have 90 unit models, so that high volume of fire, despite the fact it's only 1 AP per shot, they still can do good damage to armored units like those Storm Vermin. So yeah, Warp Lightning Cannon still online here. The Butchers got isolated over on this flank by Ikit. and the Rattling Gunners, and they're also getting blasted by that Warp Lightning Cannon, so yeah, they're getting torn apart. It's a really bad situation for such an elite unit. I was hoping they could get some good damage on Ikit, but the Overwatch fire from those Rattling Guns has been too much. I finally am able to get some Centaurs up and around to disrupt, but it's a little bit too late for the Butchers there. They're probably going to get finished off by Ikit. We'll see. They do have regeneration, so the few unit models that remain can continue to regenerate while the Centaurs chase off those Rattling Guns. But things are just generally not looking great for the Skaven. The Regiment of Renowned Doomwheel was shut down in the back line. You can see its ruined corpse there. It actually got turned into a unit of Chaos Spawn. I summoned up one unit of Chaos Spawn that did degenerate just now, and that helped do a bunch of damage. The Eye of Morsleep came into melee using its Warp Gaze to pin it in place. Morker also did some melee damage as well, so it was just a sort of a combined effort to take down this Regiment of Renowned Doomwheel here in the back. Most unfortunate for the Skaven. But, yeah, it did blow both of my Chaos Spawn summons, which is kind of a good thing, but at the same time, the Skaven leadership is just so low, just generally getting pretty close to army losses here, and the weapons teams, there's just not a whole lot of DPS left. This Storm Vermin did come back from route, though, which is pretty nice. Butchers of Kalkengard have just about been finished off, but they have managed to do some good damage to Ikit as well. So yeah, just the fact that the Eye of Morsleep is still so healthy, I think is what's tipping the balance of power so much. Then once these summoned Chaos Spawn finish up their timer, which it looks like they are just about to do, and there they go. Should help out some, but again, just the Eye of Morsleep just relentlessly pounding. It still has quite a bit of ammo left, and it's going to be too much for the Skaven to have to deal with here. Rattling Guns coming over here to try and deal with some other units. Ikit's forming a little bit of a pocket here, chasing off some routing units for the Beastmen. But, yeah. This is pretty much tail of the tape right here. It's rats getting smashed by giant rocks. So, again, what did we learn here? Skaven are going to be very scary for pretty much everyone now. They're just generally a much, much better faction. But if you can have counterfire artillery and disruption, those are two very good ways of dealing with the weapons teams. Generally, you're going to want to go very wide as well. I would recommend against taking narrow elite armies, as you're just going to get torn apart and outnumbered. But if you take a nice wide army, disrupt the Skaven lines as much as possible, you know, if you can sort of break up that multi-layer advance and just punch through very quickly, you can get on some of those second line units, or even if you just need to hold them in place for some time, as long as you can provide some kind of heavy burst damage, you know, to do shock and leadership. And of course, terror is always useful as well, certainly, but just generally I would say the keys are disruption and counterfire. Those are really going to be your two keys to success against the new Skaven. Both of these replays sort of showed that off quite well. 117 kills on the Eye of Morsleep, 134 for the Bray Shaman himself. That Chariot was a menace, and of course the summons that he got a bunch of kills, and the Vile Tides as well, perpetually refreshing the vigor of the Beastmen troops, helping them to fight into the late game. You can see the Ungor Spearmen actually in a lot of situations did quite well. 101 kills, 131, 111, must have gotten to some Skaven slaves, but they are reasonably cost-effective low-tier troops to bring against the Skaven. Ungor Raiders, also a nice pick here as well. The Centaurs that were able to get into the back line and shut down those Rattling Gunners paid for themselves in spades, absolutely. And yeah, for Black Iron, again, the Council Guard able to get a lot of kills. Clan Rats with 101 kills is also pretty impressive, but 91 on Ikit's pretty decent. He also, again, him with those Rattling Gunners finishing off the Butchers of Kalkengard was a really nice play. He just really didn't have the tools to shut down the Eye of Morsleep. Because I was able to disrupt the missiles, they, especially the Jezzails and the Warp Lightning Cannon, if they had been able to focus on the Eye of Morsleep, they probably could have taken it down relatively quickly, but losing the Wheels of Doom was definitely a pretty big mistake as well. If he had been able to keep that tight and in the front line used it to support against the Ungors, he could have terrified away a lot of those Ungor Raiders, and the infantry fight would have gone very differently, I think. But, you know, a bit of give and take there. We're still all sort of getting used to the new stuff, so don't take any of this as absolute gospel. But hopefully you guys have learned something here today with me. If you enjoyed, please give that video a like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. If you want to support me in a more personal way, help me take my channel full-time, to the next level, be sure to check out the Patreon page and the link down below. Thank you very much for watching once again, and we'll see you next time.